The United States and Israel maintain overwhelming conventional air superiority and a distinct tactical overmatch against the forces of Iran. Yet, in the first 12 days of the conflict, the U.S. armed forces absorbed the sudden loss of nearly $2.7 billion in high-value anti-missile infrastructure. Coordinated strikes successfully neutralized key targets across Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Iraq. Alongside the destruction of these ground facilities, a secondary crisis emerged: the rapid, unsustainable expenditure of high-tier interceptor munitions. The defense architecture burned through its most advanced assets, specifically the THAAD system. THAAD stands for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, and it is an advanced anti-ballistic missile system designed to intercept incoming threats in their terminal phase. The loss of these assets stems from a mathematical failure when defensive networks are exposed to a saturated volume of incoming fire, rather than a flaw in American engineering. Iranian strategy specifically targets the lag in U.S. procurement and the mathematical limits of ballistic missile defense. By forcing a high volume of intercepts, they turn American technological superiority into a severe economic vulnerability. Historically, Iran maintained a threat-centric military posture. This strategy relied on absorbing an initial enemy strike before launching a calibrated, proportionate retaliation. However, recent severe domestic instability and nationwide protests made absorbing a massive first strike politically unacceptable to the ruling regime. In January 2026, the newly established Defense Council issued a statement that officially upgraded Iran's military doctrine to address these internal and external pressures. They adopted a new target-centric model. This anticipatory defense posture eliminates the requirement to wait for an actual incoming attack before deploying force. The Council defined a specific trigger: objective signs of threat. This ambiguous threshold justifies preemptive action. By relying on a perceived threshold rather than an actual launch, Iran can execute massive, asymmetric swarming attacks against U.S. targets before defensive lines are established. The primary weapons utilized to execute this swarming doctrine are low-cost, expendable, single-use attack drones. This doctrinal upgrade allowed Iran to seize the initiative. They transitioned from a reactive target into an offensive actor, forcing the U.S. defense network into a perpetual state of hyper-reactive depletion. To maximize the impact of preemptive strikes, target selection focused explicitly on the eyes of the U.S. missile defense architecture rather than conventional troop concentrations. The THAAD system has a strict structural dependency. It relies entirely on its TPY radar for independent search and track capabilities. Early in the conflict, strikes destroyed 2 of these radars in the UAE and Jordan. There are only 15 units globally, costing $800 million each. Further out, the $1.1 billion FPS-132 early warning radar in Qatar functions as the outermost layer of defense, providing cueing data from 5,000 kilometers away. Iranian forces destroyed the FPS-132. Its loss instantly degrades trajectory prediction and missile warning capabilities for the entire theater. Russian defense systems like the S-400 utilize multiple complementary radars to prevent this exact type of single-point failure. The S-400 is a mobile surface-to-air missile system designed to engage aircraft and ballistic missiles. Without key external sensors, surviving Western defense systems operate with significantly lower coverage, drastically reduced effectiveness, and an elevated risk of friendly fire. The degraded coverage quickly resulted in chaos. Kuwaiti air defenses accidentally shot down 3 U.S. F-15E Strike Eagles, adding $282 million in hardware losses. The F-15E Strike Eagle is an American dual-role strike fighter aircraft. By destroying highly complex single-point radar nodes, Iranian forces successfully blinded the U.S. network. Surviving batteries had to rely on sheer, inefficient interceptor volume to survive the barrage. With the sensor network blinded, U.S. commanders launched massive volumes of high-tier interceptors to counter the incoming ballistic threats. To understand the severe implications of this firing rate, we have to look at the DoD P-21 procurement data. The P-21 is a Department of Defense budget exhibit that details historical production and delivery schedules for military hardware.
This animated line chart shows the cumulative delivery data for the THAAD system. Deliveries rose steadily starting in 2013, but the U.S. inventory plateaued entirely at 534 interceptors in mid-2023. We can calculate the baseline requirement for the fielded force. The U.S. operates 8 active batteries, each containing 48 interceptors. That totals 384 active interceptors locked into launchers. This distribution leaves only about 150 interceptors in the Global Strategic Reserve, available for reloads. During the 12-day conflict, U.S. forces fired over 150 THAAD interceptors and approximately 80 SM-3s at Iranian targets. The SM-3, or Standard Missile 3, is a ship-based surface-to-air missile used to intercept short to intermediate-range ballistic missiles. The expenditure directly matches the reserve pool. The entire reload capacity for the THAAD system was wiped out in under 2 weeks. The SM-3 missile inventory suffered a similar rapid depletion during the barrage. The replacement timeline is rigid. While interceptors burn in seconds, it takes years to build new early warning radars and manufacture replacement missiles. The strict mathematics of U.S. procurement dictated the outcome. The entire strategic reserve of THAAD reloads was exhausted instantly, rendering the defense network mathematically broken. This localized interceptor drain forces the U.S. into a macro-level strategic crisis with broad geopolitical impact. In just the first week, the sheer financial burn rate of the U.S. response hit an estimated $11.3 billion in operational costs and interceptor expenditures. Iran relies on cheap, asymmetric disruption, targeting vulnerable maritime energy choke points to impose massive costs on Western economies. This satellite image shows the Strait of Hormuz. The narrow landmasses bordering the water create a strict geographical constraint on maritime traffic. The immediate maritime threat caused oil prices to surge past $100 per barrel, forcing emergency interventions in global energy markets, including the proposed release of 400 million barrels from strategic reserves. Iran's doctrine of strategic patience relies precisely on this form of cost imposition and economic attrition. They do not need to achieve a conventional military victory on the battlefield to win. There is a fatal disparity between the speed of U.S. interceptor attrition and the sluggish response of the defense industrial base. A recent $700 million reprogramming of funds buys merely 45 replacement missiles. Until the United States aligns its industrial capacity and defense architecture with the grim mathematics of asymmetric swarming, overwhelming tactical superiority will continually lose out to strategic economic attrition.